Witam Państwa bardzo, bardzo serdecznie. I will be speaking English to you tonight. My name is Luisa Wójtowicz-Waga. You, I'm sure all know this. And we have two very, very, very special guests today, Giorgio Iemolo and David Bish from EF. The first, I just told my guest that it's the first company that I ever cooperated with as an English teacher. So this is an especially fantastic moment for me today. But we are meeting today to talk about language challenges and education challenges that face all of us right now in Poland in relation with the refugee situation. We have got Giorgio, who is an expert in refugee education, and we have got David, who will be also introducing to us something that EF prepared. Giorgio, for English teachers and for you, so I'm sure that it will be super exciting news for you. Before I ask my guests to say a couple of words about who they are and what they do, I just wanted to remind all of you that our webinar is recorded. So if you miss the beginning or if you have to miss the end, remember that the recording will reach you tomorrow in the afternoon, as well as the certificate of attendance. And one thing that is super important to all of us here, as you all, I'm sure, remember and know, the community of teachers that EduNation creates is a community of teachers who respect each other. So the chat, please let us reflect the respect that we share to one another. Okay, Giorgio, will you please say a couple of words about what you do and who you are?
Dziękuję, Luisa. That's the end of my Polish, so
No,
don't get excited.
Remember, komin.
Komin, yes. I even learned the genitive of that word today, but that was the spell checker that decided to go crazy. So I'm Giorgio Iemolo. I'm Italian. I've been working at EF for the past 7 years, and I'm responsible for the academics of all our non-English schools, plus Cape Town and Malta. And I've volunteered for the past 15 years with refugees in the different countries I've lived in. Last but not least, of course, in Switzerland, and I'm a linguist by training. And I'm joined tonight by my esteemed colleague, David. David, could you please say something about you?
Good evening, everyone. I'm less of a linguist, so if I try and say something like Dobry wieczór, I'm sure it's going to be terrible.
Perfect.
Lucky guess. But I'm more involved in pedagogy and teaching, particularly with technology. So I work with EF where we bring technology and classroom teaching together. And I'll be talking later on this evening about something that we've put together on offer, particularly for adult students from the Ukraine, who I know, of course, we're talking about so many of you working with. But for now, I will leave things to Giorgio, and I'll come back at the later on in the evening.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So, Giorgio, you are left all alone right now. Of course, this is not true. Don't worry.
I know. I mean, thank you.
All right, let me just add your slides, and I will see you in a while. I'm leaving you with our fantastic participants.
So, thank you, everybody. As I said, today we will discuss some challenges for in language education, especially when dealing with refugee students. In this particular case, of course, there is an emergency in Poland, given the sheer number of refugees that have been crossing the border in the last months. So I would like to start with a quote, and this is a quote that reminds us of the power of language and the power of languages in making us human. And so there is Cook is a scholar of second language learning and second language acquisition, and this quote says, "Language is at the center of human life. Knowing a second language is a normal part of human existence. It may be unusual to know only one," and this is actually pretty much true in the whole world nowadays, and even in the most remote communities, that there is always some sort of bilingualism or multilingualism. So what we will do today, we will discuss some issues and challenges related to second language acquisition, refugee and migrants. So there is the difference is often a little bit blurred, but of course we will concentrate, we will focus on refugees. And we will start by considering the fact that in second language acquisition, there is a cognitive development area that we need to consider. So, for instance, based the first language that these refugees speak. For instance, if a refugee speaks Ukrainian, it might be a little bit easier to learn Polish, given that both are Western Slavic languages, although written with a different alphabet, as opposed to a refugee coming from the Ukraine and ending up in France or in Germany, where it will be a little bit more difficult, just as an example. But then we will also discuss the most important part, which is also what concerns you as us as teachers, which is the importance of meaningful interactions, social interactions in acquiring a second language. And this is valid not just for in the context of refuge, but it's also valid in the context of second language acquisition in general. So we will look a little bit at what the literature has said, my own experience as volunteer. So I'm coming here, Luisa said, as an expert, but more than an expert in I have experience on the ground and some possible solutions, which you will see very often are related to not just to things that we might, we're normally, we think of normally. Then, of course, you can just pose some questions and describe your own challenges. And then I will leave the floor to David, who will introduce this amazing app that EF and the academic team of English Live, where David works, has put together to help Ukrainians to improve their English skills or to learn English from scratch. So I would like to start, with a consideration, which is extremely, you might think is, let's say, might be taken as a given. So for students of whatever age, but especially students who are older, teenagers and adults, it's important to become part of the host country. Younger students have less of a problem integrating and going through this acculturation process. But for older students, so teenagers and students and adults, the three different aspects of this process are extremely important, and I'm listing them here in order of importance. Language competence, because as we said, language is the inherent feature of human communication, of humanity. In a way, it's one of the features that makes us human, and the behavioral participation in the society, whether it's a smaller or a bigger group, because of course there will be this will take time, and identification, which does not mean forgetting the home country. And these three aspects taken together, of course, are extremely of paramount importance because they allow people to communicate and function in different contexts, whether it's school, going to the doctors, grocery shopping, asking for information, or dealing with bureaucracy, which is something that we all do when we settle in another country. Identity, and I'm talking about ethnic identity, is, those changes will come later on, and there is a lot of literature about that. I can also send a bibliography, and is more linked to psychological and psychosocial adjustment. We will not focus on those on this aspect tonight, because it's not relevant for the situation you're facing and for the type of work you're doing and you will be doing in the next months. The most important components will be the language competence, of course, and the behavioral participation in general. And the behavioral participation will be probably the most difficult, also based on my experience. So there is quite a lot of literature on second language acquisition in the context of refuge. So it's not something that has not been studied. Also because there've been quite a lot of crises all around the world in the past decades. But keep in mind that the problems that refugees have might be a little bit more, a little bit different compared to what normal learners of a second language might face. So we have social factors which are of a different kind. So we're not talking about losing your face when you're trying to learning a new language. Of course, language related difficulties, but above all, there is the problem of psychological trauma, and this is where teachers can exert an enormous influence, as we will discuss in a little while. So, sorry, my computer is acting up. When we talk about challenges, and we will see that this is something that you can extend to different contexts, but these are very important, very specific challenges in the context of refugees. So first of all, of course, they're most very often poor foreign language skills prior to migration, in this case, as you can see, Ukrainian people coming to Poland do not know Polish, and they might not know any word in English. So that might hinder the communication. Then, of course, all sorts of past traumatic experiences. And of course, we are at the beginning, in a way, of this crisis. But it's very important that refugees do not get limited social networks in resettlement countries, because that will affect their language competence. And barrier to learning new systems and cultural norms, for instance, when entering the state school system of a different country. Lack of material resources. This is something we've seen repeatedly, and it happens very often when you have this sudden influx of people in other countries. And then, of course, if we talk about school, then you need to have some cultural capital, which is context specific, to understand this new school world you're thrown into. And of course, this overall experience can be overwhelming, because you just get resettled and you need to adapt to new educational settings. You need to adapt to new norms, new rules, a new language, and new cultural codes. Very often, and that's also what we see, is that there is an interaction or lack of schooling, especially with younger children. So, you might get children who are 8 or 9, very often, who, were forced, didn't even start school, or older, teenagers who just interrupted. They had to stop because they had to flee. And of course, what happens? This requires higher levels of support. And I think you can relate to that right now in this context. But the problem is that, there is this tendency to kind of slip between the cracks for refugee students, because there are material problems. There are material problems, bureaucratic problems. But of course, it's extremely important when working with refugee students that we, as teachers, as educators, would focus on their education, and we care about them. We give them care and nurture, because it's through education that they will have the chance to break away from the cycles of poverty, disadvantage, and lack of identification. So what teachers and educators need to do, and also in my experience, and I will come to this in a little while, is to get to equip themselves with knowledge and strategies when working with students with refugee backgrounds, to achieve the best possible outcome. So not the best outcome, the best possible outcome. This is an important distinction, because of course we're talking about people who are fleeing from extreme situations, and whose trauma will of course affect their grades and their the way they will integrate themselves into the new system, the new culture, especially at the beginning, without any sort of care and nurturing from the beginning. My experience. I encountered quite a lot of challenges in these years. I started volunteering with refugees in 2007, first in Italy, where I'm from, and then in the US, where I lived, and in Switzerland for the past 10 years. And I encountered refugees from very different backgrounds. So this is not limited to refugee. It's not focused on refugees from Ukraine, but a lot of those things do happen quite, or do tend to repeat themselves. And we saw also in the short, very partial review of the literature that exists, and that those things tend to repeat themselves in students, and in whether young teenager or adult with a refugee background. So if we want to kind of look at the challenges we can face as educators, we're talking about economic challenges, of course, personal challenges. But then let's focus a little bit on the linguistic, temporal, and psychological challenges. And in my experience, so when teaching, for instance, Italian or English or German, which is what you speak in Zurich, and not Swiss German, not only Swiss German, of course, and this is actually a very relevant thing here. A lot of the challenges that refugees encountered were related to pronunciation. Pronunciation was always the biggest challenge. And also because of and there is literature about that, because of the trauma they've lived in or they've experienced, and there is actually there are some cognitive changes that happen in the brain that make it more difficult to process and some sounds. So, but if you want further literature about that, I'm happy to share. But so, there is this overall, everybody has an issue with pronunciation. Then word formation and length. So this was pretty consistent, whether it was Italian, English, or German, grammar, vocabulary, of course, but especially, this is extremely important. One of the things that refugees found extremely difficult to master and extremely challenged was the gap between the standard language and the dialect, or the regional variety of the language. Namely, for instance, again, to take the example of Switzerland, you come here, you learn standard German, which is the official language, one of the 3 official languages of Switzerland. But then people in their everyday life speak Swiss German, which is a dialect. It's actually another language, it's a sister language of standard German, and it's completely different. So that, of course, and the same happens in Italy. You go, you learn all these verb forms, amazing, fantastic. No one uses them in reality. So people got confused, and then a lot of lexical variation in terms of regionalism in both in all those countries, including the US. So, and again, then there is something which is related to the difficulty, that's in mastering or in understanding, of course, which is something already very difficult after years of study, between the language you study in class, as a refugee, or in the state school system, or in in special classes, in volunteering classes, and the language spoken colloquially by the people, where you just have this vocabulary which is multi-meaning, which is normal within varieties of the same language. And I'm pretty sure that this happens the same happens, for instance, in with Ukrainians in Poland, where there will be a lot of words which share historically the same roots, but then of course they will have acquired different meanings over time, so there will be like the usual false friends. And then of course the way refugees are the distribution of refugees, so depending on how they're settled and where where they live, this might make it very difficult for them to be in contact with locals, to acquire their language, but also to acquire, for instance, in this case, not just Polish, but also to practice other language skills. In this case, we are discussing also English, and also other subjects. So this is also extremely important, the lack of access to the host, let's say, population. I wanted to remark here, because this is something I think some of you already have already had the chance to listen to one of my boring webinars. And as you know, if you remember, I'm obsessed about the with the importance of interaction within the social context when you learn a new language, a second, third, it doesn't matter, the number of the number of the language you're learning, or which language you're learning, the social context and the interaction. For me, it's extremely important whenever you learn a language, but especially, in the case of refugees, where you need faster, in a way, a faster learning curve, because of very pressing needs that people have to learn a language, to learn English, to learn German, to learn Polish, to learn any other language. So social interaction is actually what makes second language acquisition more successful within the context of within the context of refugee students. Some solutions, I've tried also with my other fellow volunteers. Of course, these are very general. We can have long discussions about this, but it's first of all, and this is true, of course, of any second language learning, there is the need to practice the language and all its skills by attending, courses and interacting with native speakers or with teachers of people who are competent at the native level in that language. Also, being in contact with this acquired language, watching series, movies, listening to songs, national radio stations of the hosting countries, whether, as I said, different countries, helps a lot when you learn a second language acquisition. And also it helps a lot in terms of settling yourself in the host country. But absolutely crucial is attend social activities of where you can practice the language with native speakers or native-like speakers. So people who have a good master of the language we are teaching. As we mentioned before, might be the local language or English. But then, and this is actually the most important part right now, because no matter what we teach and no matter what, how well we try to prepare our materials, the most important part in this context, in the context of, of refugee students, is taking into account the trauma, the psychological trauma. And here, this is a little bit, it's the part which is longer, weirdly enough. But I would like to discuss a little bit more because I think it's extremely relevant in whatever context one finds herself teaching. So there is, it's always important to have a trauma-informed team. So people who understand what, which kind of trauma those students might have, gone through it, and not just the teacher, but also other people who will interact with students. And this will allow staff in general, teachers, and every person in a school or in whatever setting you will teach, to empathize with students. And you need, luckily we don't have first-hand experience with those with those traumas. And it's not our job. We're not psychologists, we're teachers, we're educators. So we are not people who can solve trauma, but we need to get, good information about the types of trauma that our students might possibly have, depending on the context, like the war in the Ukraine in that case. Depending on the context, they might, they have experience. And just to give you a couple of examples, you might have, if you work with little kids, let's say 6, 7, you might have some sort of post-traumatic stress disorder, whereby 3, 4 kids start acting up, getting up together and hiding food. You don't need to be a specialist to understand why they do that. But of course, understanding how to react and discussing how to react and researching a little bit how to react when those things happen is extremely important. Why? Because people need to feel safe. This is, one of the basic human needs. We want to feel safe. And as I said before, with regard to phonetic processing, so the way we hear sounds and we process them, and then we can, so that we can reproduce them when we learn a second language. So and I said trauma affects that. Trauma alters the brain, and one other big aspect is that, especially with young people, and this is when you see all these outbursts of aggression and violence in as teenagers, for instance, it's because they feel unsafe. And if you feel unsafe, of course, then you cannot work. You cannot learn. So before all those, before learning, this is what needs to take place. So making them feel safe, empathizing with them, and also, getting information on the kind of type of trauma that the students have experienced. How can you do that? How can you make your classroom safe, especially not just physically, but also intellectually, emotionally? I think now good norms and agreements. So something which is shared, especially if you work, I assume that they are here, if I remember correctly, because that was also in the previous webinars, there are quite a few teachers who teach in state schools. So, and you might have already quite a few Ukrainian students who've been incorporated into your classes. And in that case, establishing good norms and community agreements with the whole community is extremely important. So privacy, and that is avoiding, for instance, when we notice that some students do not want to talk about certain topics because they are connected to the trauma they have experienced and they are experiencing. Also, remember that we live in an age where the flow of information is constant, and we get visual information about what's happening all the time. So of course, people, the trauma is continuous, and be open to feedback, and take the space you have, not just to teach and finish what you decided to do in your weekly plan, your monthly plan, in your trimester plan. But in that case, make sure that you take the space of the classroom, you make it the space where those students can heal and grow with the local students. And I know this might sound mundane. It's extremely important to remain consistent and predictable. So children of all ages, so up to 18, but this happens also with adults, they're always on high alert. So if one is consistent and predictable, so you have norms that they're clearly set, that your students know, they know that the space is safe and that you are there for them, with them, that the agreements about what they can do, they cannot do, that what you expect from them are actually set clearly, will put them at ease. For instance, if your students, and this will happen, you have the most amazing communicative language class, and those students arrive, and they will, not just because they don't know the others, but because of what we discussed so far. So the trauma, the stress disorders derived from the traumas they've experienced and they're still experiencing, that is, of course, something that will that's something which will make it more difficult for a lot of students to speak, whether it's English in this case. So for instance, to participate in a task where they have to integrate, especially, and this happens until they do not feel safe. Now, before I pass the floor, I leave the floor to my colleague David, who has actually an amazing tool for you and for all Ukrainians currently living in Poland. I would like to ask you, you can type and then you can, we can have a little bit of a question and answer session, QA session in the end. Would like you to think about your challenges, and I would like to thank you. I hope this presentation has been useful and has given you some inspiration based on my own experience. Teaching refugees is something which is very close to my heart. Thank you so much. Dziękuję.
Giorgio, thank you very, very much. I understand that if the questions are flowing in our chat box, I will be showing them to you after David has
exactly.
finished. So thank you very much. Now let's see, David. Yes, David is back with us. Hello. So Giorgio, I will hide you for a moment if you don't mind. All right, David. So here we go.
Okay, I think we've jumped a couple of slides. Yes, thank you very much.
Good to see you again, ladies and gentlemen. David Bish. David, what have you got for us?
Thanks very much, Louisa. First thing I wanted to say, everybody, but we missed it as the slides came in, is first of all, don't read the slide, just listen to this. I wanted to say thank you very much. I wanted to say thank you very much, not just from myself and EF, but from people around the world for the incredible work that you're doing, dealing with these vast numbers of displaced people from the Ukraine who've come into your country, and the hospitality, the love, the friendship, and the teaching that you're offering them is incredible. And everybody owes you a debt, I think, for this. So really, from me, thank you very much. So many of us also feel this need to be involved and to do something. Like Giorgio, I volunteer in my free time. I just pack boxes into trucks, right? I'm not doing some of these great things that some of you people are doing, but our whole organization, EF Education First, is committed to learning and language. I mean, we firmly believe that when language fails, war happens. I think to badly quote Margaret Atwood, we need language to bring people together, and of course, so often that is English. And as professional English teachers, in some way, you're in the front line of providing education here, and we thank you very much for that. EF Education First really wanted to help and support this. So what we've been doing for the last 2 to 3 weeks is we've taken an app, a product that we have, which is used by businesses worldwide to train people to speak English. And this is an app which provides online courseware that people study, as well as study in virtual classrooms. And this is, like I say, this is quite an expensive commercial app. But what we've done is we've adapted it fully so that the front end of the app and the way it's used is entirely in Ukrainian for Ukrainian refugees to very easily log in, to start using the app, and to study with the app entirely for free. So we've taken a fully commercial, quite expensive product, and we've offered it completely free. My big part in this is I work with the live teachers that work with EF Teach Online, EF English Live. Our live teachers also felt the need to get involved, and we've had over 400 teachers volunteer much like many of yourselves, I know some of you teach in schools, but I know also some of you are teaching adults. This work is very specifically for adults, and 400 of our teachers who teach adults said, we want to help, we want to provide lessons for free, which are going through this online platform built into the app. So let me just break down some of the detail for you. And just to be clear, I'm also about to send you the details as well in Polish as well, so you can have that as a backup and some things to send out. But just to explain exactly what we've got here. This EF Help Ukraine app is adult English language course. It's at beginner and elementary level, so it's kind of A1, sort of A1, sort of A1 plus. Interactive online self-study. So this is a variety of, it's several hundreds of hours of online activities, including video activities, video role plays, interactive sort of puzzles, things with dialogues, quizzes. There's a lot of what you would expect from a sort of online learning, except, as I say, this is really the top quality online learning from a company, EF. I mean, you heard the name mentioned right at the beginning of our webinar here. We've been doing this we've been doing online learning for 20 years. So the product we have is very thorough. But what really makes this app very, very special is the fact that it also has everyday group lessons linked to the content of the courseware units, but group lessons taught by a team of live teachers that I've kind of coordinated for this that work around the world. Right now, we're focusing on lessons in European time zone. So there's lessons every 2 hours in the center of the day from 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock Central European time. We've got group lessons, and they're small classes. They're classes for just up to 8 students. So they do get teacher attention. They get plenty of chance to speak and speak together. And again, we have made these are closed classes. These are closed classes for the displaced Ukrainians. Again, they've been reading the instructions on how to get in Ukrainian, although all the language teaching and learning is fully immersed in English, as we teach these days. But we have trained these teachers especially. I know that, again, much as Giorgio mentioned, sort of trauma-informed teaching techniques and so on, we've made sure that the teachers are very well aware and very well equipped to deal with this content, with these groups, and make sure that it's a comfortable learning experience. And so they're managing small classes with the students, just 8 in a class, and we're doing that 4 times a day, 7 days a week. So really, the students can constantly study online as much, and there's hundreds of hours of courseware, as I've said, at each of those 2 levels, so they can study that very thoroughly, and they can take these online lessons. Now, this app, EF Help Ukraine, we've said, okay, it's a great tool to use in Poland. This is going out worldwide. You saw on that first slide there. Apparently, this service is worth up to $2 million when you put it all together, and it's out there in Google Play and the App Store. I'm going to show you some links in just a second. One of the most important things to mention, although it's not up here on the slide I've just shown you up on this first slide, is this app has actually been backed by the UNHCR, the UN High Commission for Refugees, as a tool that they believe will help empower refugees and allow them to gain access to critical services. Especially, I know many of the people here are dealing with refugees sort of in classes and the children of refugees, but there's possibly mum there as well who also needs to know a little bit more language, and as well people who are passing through who can't attend face-to-face classes. This is really aimed at giving them something that they can use on the move, mobile, wherever they travel worldwide as they're learning. So it will stay with them and take them up through, okay, those critical first 2 levels at the moment of English language learning. And I've put together, don't worry, this is very, very small. I know you can't read this, but there is a fact sheet that we've got that is in Polish there. You might be able to see it's in Polish. And we're going to send that. Lydia's going to send that out to you after the webinar. So you've all got that. And you'll notice at the bottom, there is, I've blown it up a bit. There's this magic QR code, you know, so if you're super keen, you know, you can point your phone at that QR code now. And as I hope it says in Polish, you can see the app on the relevant app store, whether you're an Android user or whether you're an iOS user. The app works through on both of them, and you'll get that. Oh, here we go. There's a message coming through now that you're going to get that all tomorrow. If you are a bit more old school and you don't like QR codes, again, there's a couple of links. Don't rush off to that link now, but maybe write that down. EFCOM Help Ukraine has all the information and links in English. And of course, I'm talking to you because, as I said right at the beginning, I know you're doing such great work with these displaced people and really helping them, you know, get their lives moving and get things together. But of course, the most important thing for us to do is to reach out to those individuals. So we've put together some social media assets that either you can send or post to students, stick them on a classroom wall, perhaps if you've got one for you know, mums to see at the end of the day and get this information. Or if you have any groups that you'd like to post this in, of course, this is one great group. But again, to reach out further on, we have this information, as you can see, that's in Ukrainian on the right-hand side of the screen there. And we're again sending this out to you so that the students, potential students, can get this information. So again, just a quick recap. This is an adult course, elementary and beginner levels, online interactive self-study, and those live group classes, which really move the learning forward. You know, Giorgio was talking about that kind of language socialization, right? The social interaction, the importance of bringing language to life, which is why we call this English Live, this product, right? We've got the students speaking together, speaking with a real teacher and actually practicing their language and doing something meaningful with it. So that's 4 of those classes every day, 7 days a week. And right now I have 400 teachers teaching these lessons. If we get more people online, we'll increase the number of lessons we have out there. So we've got capacity to ramp that up as we go. So that was me. I'll leave you with that last link in case you were copying that down. But that's everything I needed to say. Thank you very much, Louisa.
Thank you, David. That was, I immediately thought, I know who I'm going to give this information to, because I know.
Dziękuję.
Yes. I have some people around me who will definitely need it. So thank you very much for that. And thank you for joining us tonight. Now, Giorgio, you asked for questions, and there is a question to you coming from Agnieszka, who, first of all, she thanks you very much. And thank you very much, Agnieszka, for your contribution. And she was actually quite curious to know which countries and which nationalities of refugees you worked with so far.
So far it's been mostly, so in Europe, it's Syrian and Afghans and West Africans who've been coming through in the past, well, let's say 15 years. Due to other conflicts happening in those regions. And in the US, it was resettled people also from the same areas. So especially Afghans who were resettled because they worked with the US military back in Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay.
there are varying levels of, let's say, literacy even.
And definitely languages that have not much to do with any of your native language. There are comments about the tool that David showed us, that it sounds like a great tool. So already good feedback, David. Thank you very much. And general thank yous for the evening. Now the question to our participants: if you have any questions, any comments right now that you would like to share, thank you very much. Agata says that it has been really useful. Super. Thank you very much, Agata. Any questions to our guests before I end our broadcast? It is now or never, ladies and gentlemen. Or maybe not never, but I hope not never. But let's. Beata says very nice and useful. Thank you very much, Beata. Let us wait a second, and if no questions and no more comments appear, I will say thank you very much to you, Giorgio. Thank you for sharing your wonderful experience with us, and thank you, David, for sharing the tool, which is, it sounds like, wonderful, extremely useful tool. Agnieszka says that I can see that those people have been through a great deal of post-war trauma
Absolutely.
too. Yeah. And unfortunately, because we have right now waves. So the first wave of people who came in the first 2 weeks, these are different. We can see psychologically that these were different people that are coming right now in over a month of the war now. So I think we can all see it unfortunately. Yes, a peaceful night. Thank you very much to all of you, our dear guests. Thank you so much for coming. I hope that you will join me again.
Thank you
soon.
so much. Hopefully
Thanks very much.
next time face to face back in Warsaw as last time.
Yeah, because Giorgio, you don't know that, David, and I think some of our participants know it, but some of you might not. I think over 2 years ago, was it, Giorgio? 2.5 years ago, Giorgio visited us during a conference, a live, face-to-face, real conference.
We are restarting with that.
Yes, grazie mille. Agnieszka, you are the star of the chat box tonight. Okay, thank you very much.
Niente. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And everything that David said, all the materials. David, I received your email, by the way. So
excellent. The technology works.
Yes, at least that into our direction. Yes. So thank you. You will receive the email from me and from Edunation tomorrow with the recording, with certificates, with materials from David. And please use the app. I'm sure that.
Yeah, and with that app, get that into the hands of the students, right? Get them using that, this self-study thing. So you shouldn't need a teacher to guide through or anything. Give that to the students and or potential students, any Ukrainians who could learn with that.
I just when I come back home, I will wake up my Ukrainian guests and I'll say, Olesia, this is for you.
Don't sleep. Study now.
No, maybe I will let her sleep.
Absolutely. I think it's important.
Okay, thank you so much again. It was a really, really good evening. Very quality, high quality, very valuable evening. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thanks again to everybody out there who's doing so much great work.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Bye.